No, they're coming for an award and then thank you.
Okay, welcome everyone to the Reno County Commission normal commission session of Wednesday, December 13th. I'll call the meeting to order. The second item on the agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance, followed by a prayer by Pastor Darrell Peterson of Grace Christian Church. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Pastor?
It's quite an honor to come before you all to pray and get the meeting started correctly then. So let's pray. Dear Heavenly and most gracious Father, we come before you. We thank you, Lord God, for this city, for this county. And Father, we pray blessings over the commission. We thank you, Lord God, for the wisdom they have. And Father, we just thank you for the heart they have, the heart to serve and to serve to do what a good job should be. And we thank you, Lord God, for this day as a blessed day coming in and blessed day going out. And Father, we just thank you for this city, this county. And we thank you, Lord God, it is a blessed place to be. And we praise you, Father. We thank you for it in Jesus' precious name. Amen.
Thank you, Pastor. At this time, we have a few welcome and announcements. The first item here is the retirement and recognition of Youth Services Director Shelley Breedemeyer. Randy, do you want to say a few words?
Sure. Shelley's been with Reno County for 35 years, the last 3 years as the director. She's had a huge impact on the success for the Youth Services Department, and it was, we didn't want to see her leave, but it was time, she thought, to retire, so it was a great honor to work with her. And I also want to mention that her retirement reception is December 15th, this Friday, 2 to 4 in this room.
Okay, thanks. Shelley, did I pronounce your name wrong? Is it Bredemeyer?
You were very close.
Okay, sorry. Well,
It's Shelley Bredemeyer,
okay.
but you were very close.
Well, and I asked, you didn't have anything you wanted to say. But
I know your agenda is very heavy today,
Yeah.
but I just want to say it's been an honor to work for Reno County for 35 years, and I've had an opportunity to have many different positions through my career, and that's been very exciting and probably allowed me to stay this long in youth services. But when you start seeing your first children that you worked with, grandchildren come through, I think it's probably time to clock out a little bit. But other than that, it's been an honor. Thank you.
Well, we appreciate it on behalf of the entire county. Thank you for your service to our community. We have a small token of our appreciation here in a plaque, and if you want to bring staff up and we take a picture with the commission really quick, if that's all right. Yeah.
Yes, please. I am the boss. Ooh, I like that. Okay. All right, everybody, very good. I have windows. Go ahead and guys have the hands in your pockets or to your side, whichever. All right. Look at me. Pretend this is fun. Plaque and tip just there you go. Thank you very much. Yay, 1, 2, 4. Made somebody laugh. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
A couple other announcements this morning. One is the treasurer, Brenda Cowitz, has indicated to the commission that she is retiring at the end of December 29th. So that's about a year ahead of her term, I think. And so there'll need to be a special appointment by, she's a Republican, so the Republican Reno County Committee will have to appoint a interim treasurer for the next year. Is that right? Okay. So just be aware of that. And I think if it's a pretty specialized position, you need some good financial understanding, and so I think if anyone is interested in that, they should probably contact the chair of the Reno County Republican Committee, which who is that now? Ryan Patton. Yeah, right. So Ryan Patton, and I think we have that on the county website under elected officials. So they've got about 14 days for that. Ish.
Donna will correct me if that's wrong. I think that's right. They've been notified so they can start their process because it does take them a while to get together, and the goal is to hopefully they can get their person selected prior to the expiration of her resignation date.
Okay.
So, yeah.
All right.
That is a very important position. Qualifications are very important because it handles a lot of money, and on top of that, there's times, and timeliness is very important to get things done.
So I believe, if I remember correctly, the 21st is when we are meeting to select her replacement.
Okay. Thank you. One other thing I'd like to kind of mention and thank those responsible. I think we put out a press release recently about the first-time felony drug offender program that we just initiated. I think that's a lot of great work between the DA, the corrections director, and the courts, and so appreciate their effort in working on innovative ways to keep the community safe while not overly burdening the jail and the resources that are required for that. So I wanted to thank them especially for that. Is there anyone here for public comment for items not on the agenda? I know there was one related to 7B, and we can take the comment at 7B. Casey, I know you wanted to talk about solar, so we can take that during that item if you want.
Well, it's not related.
Okay, well, if you want to come up, if you have, yep.
First of all, I'd like to say good morning and Merry Christmas.
Merry
It's
Christmas.
almost here, isn't it? Okay, Casey Swartz, 207 Buckskin Road. I'm speaking to address the solar regulation process and make some observations on your November 22nd meeting, where it was decided to direct the Planning Commission to focus on new regulations that would ban commercial solar projects countywide with a carve-out for smaller projects. The reasoning given for the change was that the majority of people the county and planning commissioners heard from were opposed to commercial solar projects. It was noted at the last meeting that on the pro-solar side, there were only 2 people, both from Hutchinson, and one was a lobbyist. So I would like to start off by talking about the anti-solar side. Here's some of the facts from the official record of the anti-solar side. Keep in mind that it's just the official record. I have no access to anything else that was verbally said or what have you. Only 20 Reno County households spoke at the hearing or submitted written comments against commercial solar, with 2 of those households being from Hutchinson. 2 out-of-county households spoke against commercial solar. Several of the total 22 households wrote and spoke of support for renewable energy, but had concerns over any local projects. Only 4 households out of the total 22 requested a county-wide ban on commercial solar. One of those households was out of county and was a longtime anti-renewables activist. A petition was signed and presented with 360 signatures requesting no commercial solar installations in the Cheney watershed area. I have no more details on the petition than that. Not present in your discussion was the fact that NextEra has recorded at least 11 solar lease options with thousands of acres enrolled in southeast Reno County. Those landowners are obviously pro-commercial solar. When I asked why these people didn't voice their support at the hearing or by writing, I was given an earful. It seems relationships in this area are still strained following the denied wind energy permit. With any decision, there are winners and there are losers. There are casualties in all policy choices. It's unavoidable. You may disagree with me, but I'd like to shed some light on what I see as a few of the consequences, if you will, of a solar ban. Number 1, facts. There is a war raging against renewable energy. As in any war, the first casualty is truth. Fossil fuel groups fund disinformation campaigns, and good, well-meaning people unknowingly repeat these falsehoods, doing their best to short-circuit solar energy projects based on a foundation of untruths, such as fragile, short-lived, and toxic solar panels. 2, the planning process. My understanding was that planning and zoning regulations were a process whereby public input was taken and facts were presented into an official record with a recommendation from the planning commissioners to be presented to the county commissioners. I feel the process has now been altered. And more importantly to me, I did not realize that the head count of supporters versus detractors is what mattered most in determining the solar regulations. Had I known this, I would have acted differently, as there is actually much support for renewable energy in Reno County. Number 3, farmers and landowners. Solar energy leases are a great tool for a landowner to ensure land stays in the family and remains economically productive. Additionally, a dependable source of base income from solar leasing can be a lifeline and provide substantial support for overall farming operations. 4, landowner rights. I believe that my rights end where your rights begin. However, you must, using evidence, be able to show some sort of harm will be caused to you by my actions on my land, to show an infringement of your rights on your land. 5, county income. Generally, ag land for commercial solar would lose its ag designation and be taxed at a much higher level paid for by the solar company. Also, in the permit process, an annual pilot payment for the initial 10 years would be required by the county. The net result would be more tax revenue for the county and local taxing entities. For example, assuming the denied Pretty Prairie wind farm would have been approved with a production start date in mid-2019, by now Reno County would have received approximately $4 million worth of pilot payments, with landowners being paid another approximately $4 million in lease payments. And to wrap this up, some final food for thought on your proposed carve-out for the 10-acre and smaller commercial solar projects. Most people don't realize that solar is solar, no matter the size. The technology and panels are the same for a 1-acre site as for a 1,000-acre site. The basics are simply repeated over and over and over. The number of panels per acre is generally the same. 1 acre of rain is absorbed by 1 acre of land, and so on. For regulation and planning purposes, the logical extension of this reality should be a decision that either solar farms are a good use of county land or they are not. Project size really shouldn't matter much. If you believe that a 10-acre solar farm can be a good neighbor, then by logical extension, so can a larger solar farm. The overall impact is the same. And with that, again, Merry Christmas. Thanks for providing me a platform to air my thoughts.
Is there anyone else here for an item not on the agenda? Hearing none. Additions or revisions to the agenda. I did ask staff to move 6M to business items. It was a little late in my request, and so they didn't get it on there by the time we were able to do that for technical reasons. So unless there's objection, we'll move 6M in between 7B and C, because there's somebody here. Wait, actually there's nobody here on that item. So we'll just put it at the end, if that's all right. 7E. Does the commission have any other agenda changes? No. Staff?
I need to request an additional executive session for non-elected personnel of 5 minutes.
Okay, so there'll be a second executive session, 10B, for 5 minutes. Anything else? Okay, we'll make those changes unless there's objection. Okay, consent agenda is a big one today. Kind of year-end cleanup. Randy, you got anything you want to mention?
The resolutions for year-end transfers is an annual event, and that's for projects or expenses that have not been completed yet. We move them to reserve so we can complete them next year when they're ready to be completed. Also to build up for some larger expenses that we have planned for future years to start building the money now instead of hitting the taxpayers all at once. That's the reason for this. The actual transfer dollar amounts won't be determined until as we're working with the audit and close out month 13 to see what money is still available for budget authority.
Any other questions, or is there a motion?
I would move to accept it. Thank you. I would move to accept the agenda as presented by staff with the exception of 6M. Is that correct? Yeah, 6M.
Commissioner Hurst moves.
I'll second
Second
that.
by Commissioner Parks. Any discussion? Hearing none. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Hurst,
Yes.
Commissioner Parks,
Yes.
Commissioner Boatner, Commissioner Weitzel,
Yes.
sorry, Commissioner Hurst, not Hurst, Commissioner Friesen.
Yes. Motion passes 5-0. Thank you.
Oh my.
Okay, moving on. Item 7A is the clerk office annual report. Donna Patton's here.
Good morning, Commissioners. Donna Patton, Reno County Clerk. Just a few things that we've done in the elections in the clerk's office last year. We had 3 special elections, so we had 5 total elections last year. We are getting ready for the presidential preference primary in March. That will cover everybody in the county, and then, of course, we got the 2 big ones coming up. Jenna and I attended a Sanborn Institute through Wichita State University to get certified, and we'll be continuing to do that. We sent the tax statements out. This year we opted to do the e-statements, e-notices. If anybody wants to sign up for that, you can either call my office or the treasurer's office, or your tax statement will have all that information on it, so you can sign up for that. We've had probably about 150, so we haven't had a lot do that, but we're hoping that that number will go up. So it's just cheaper for us. We don't have to mail out the notices and the tax statements. And I think that's it. Do you have any questions?
Question? Commissioner Hurst.
Please correct me and Randy, and you, if I'm incorrect, but I came away from the KAC meetings with the information that in 2024, the state will not pay for the mailing and expenses that the city clerk has. They paid for the last 2 years with regarding RNR. It's my understanding that next year it'll fall on us.
That is correct, unless the legislature agrees to pay that again. You are correct. That will fall on the county, which Randy has created a special line item for that so we can track it. And then I have to bill all of the taxing entities. So that will take some time to get all that done. But that is correct. It will fall back on the taxpayers, the local taxpayers.
Somewhere around 26,000.
I think that's about what it was this year, about
Yeah.
23, and postage is going up, so it'll be about $26,000.
And that's kind of one of those state mandates come down to us to pay for.
It's an unfunded mandate, correct?
So,
If they choose not to fund it again, they may. We don't know that.
Thank you, Donna. Your department always does a great job.
Thank you.
We get to see firsthand the election process and all the work you guys do, and it's always goes without a hitch. So thank you for that, and thank you for everything you do for Reno County.
Thank you.
Okay. Item 7B is annexation of land into the city of Hutchinson. Patrick, you want to brief us on that real quick?
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner. So 3 different landowners that have land outside of any current city petitioned the city of Hutchinson to be annexed into that city. Because that land is not contiguous with the city of Hutchinson, it's what sometimes is referred to as an island annexation. There is a special statute that has a different process for being annexed than would be typical. And that process requires first the city of Hutchinson to pass an ordinance that says they do want to annex that land. So that's happened. The next step in the process would be for the county commissioners to do a finding that, and it's a very specific finding. You have to review whether or not allowing this annexation would hinder the growth of any other city in the county. It's not a broad, yes, we like this, no, we don't like this, but it's a specific finding about growth of other cities being affected by this annexation. So, and statute requires you to take that up within 30 days of the city taking their step. So that's why it's before you this morning. I have drafted a generic resolution that says that you find that. It's up for you guys to either adopt that resolution saying that you agree it will not hinder growth, or you could vote it in the opposite manner. These tracts are part of a proposed industrial park by the chamber, and I see the chamber's here. I don't know if they want to talk about it, but that's kind of setting the table for what's before you.
Thank you, Patrick. I know there's at least one person in the audience that wants to speak, and the Mayor Richardson, and Vice Mayor Fast are here as well. Do you want to speak at all? I'm wondering if you have if the chamber or the city wants to say anything just to help. It sounded like the public comment may be related to questions that they didn't have information for. So anything you want to say ahead of it may be helpful before they.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak on this subject. My name's Deborah Tufel. I'm the president of the Hutchinson-Reno County Chamber of Commerce and also serve as the president of another entity called Growth, Inc. And Growth, Inc. is one of the petitioners for the annexation into the city of Hutchinson for this project. We own a parcel of ground and have option agreements for purchase of adjacent parcels. So all three entities are petitioning for this request currently. And this is related to the large industrial complex that we are proposing to develop along the K96 corridor. In total, it's approximately 487 acres. And we've talked about the reason for this development is that the size of projects that are looking at Kansas recently are becoming larger in scope than what our current land offerings have been for industrial purposes. But the specific reason for annexation into the city of Hutchinson relates to the ability to serve that parcel with adequate infrastructure. In order to truly create a site that is marketable for that purpose, we need to provide a sure source of water and wastewater services that are plentiful enough for an industry that might look at it. And so in putting together the infrastructure plan, we have been working with both cities of South Hutchinson and Hutchinson to make sure that everyone is on the same page with that opportunity and how do we best serve the water need. And it became evident through those conversations that the largest source of water does come from the city of Hutchinson. And so a study has been done about what it would take to bring the water to the site. And so everyone has been at the table working on a memorandum of understanding between the cities and the county to make sure that even with the annexation of this, that we're doing this in the benefit of all of the communities involved. And so that's why we're here today, is to request that your finding that then would have to go back to the city of Hutchinson for final action on the annexation. And I'm happy to answer other more specifics, but that's a general overview.
And my understanding is the city was required to pass a resolution to send it to us, and that passed unanimously. Is that right?
That's correct.
Yeah, there's a very specific process. It starts there, comes to you, and then goes back to them to finish it.
Okay. I know there's some adjacent landowners that may have public comment. If you want to come up now and just state your name for the record, your address, and maybe give us an idea where you are related to this project.
And if I could just say one other thing about the island annexation only impacts these parcels that are being requested, and it has been specified by the city that they will not have any intention to annex other parcels outside of these tracts.
Okay.
Thank you.
Chair.
Yeah.
And I would just piggyback on that and say if the city did want to annex other parcels in the future, they would again come before this board.
Okay.
And also if they were, and I don't believe that this is intent, but if they wanted to exercise extraterritorial jurisdiction, it would also come before this board. So there are continued checks and balances on the process.
Thank you.
Good morning.
Welcome.
I've never been to one of these, so you'll have to
That's
bear
all right.
with me. I'm Karen Drake. I live at 1906 East Trail West Road, so it's just down. We are Elmer, and I just found out about this yesterday. So I didn't know this was going on in our community, which is Elmer. So some of the people we got together, a couple of us got together to try and figure out what's going on because we've had no education on it, no clarification. nothing's been said to us, and it is in our backyard, and it does butt up against some of my neighbor's land. So I guess I'm here for clarification. The ETJ was a concern of mine because I fall within that 3-mile radius of that proposed land. I didn't know if all the land has been secured, purchased, and deeded over. And honestly, you know, what is this going to do to my land value? And is it going to raise my taxes and decrease my land value because we have an industrial park right in our neighborhood? So these are just some of the questions I have, and I really would like some clarification on what is going in there, what's proposed to go in there. We have no idea. You know, you hear things like you need water out there, that's obvious. How many gallons per minute? If it's a huge amount, then what kind of industry can go in there? And is that industry going to have toxic waste on the property that they have to get rid of in my backyard? So there's a lot of questions that haven't been answered. There's a lot of things I don't know, and I'd like some clarification on what's going in there, and is the land already purchased? Is it a done deal?
Thank you, Mr. Drake. I think we could maybe try to parse through some of your questions really quick. And Patrick, you talked about the extraterritorial zone. Is it just the annexed area, or is it the 3-mile buffer around the annexed area?
So currently, this land that we're talking about is close enough to the city of South Hutchinson that it could actually be that South Hutchinson has the potential to use their extraterritorial jurisdiction. I'm having trouble. I'm going to say ETJ from now on, so everyone hopefully knows the acronym. To my knowledge, they haven't done that yet. So that's just zoning. Currently, this land that we're talking about, that's a proposed industrial park. I don't know that it has a determined use. It wouldn't be a county decision anyway because we don't own the land. But I think it's been publicly said it's a proposed industrial site. If it were not in any city or in any zoning, then the county would have to be involved in the permitting and the development of anything that was industrial in there. And we could use our county standards to do that. We have that process. However, I don't want to speak on planning and zoning's behalf, but the county doesn't have as much experience with industrial permitting and zoning as probably the city of Hutchinson, that has a lot more of that. So I think that was one of the discussion items about who would be the best to look over the zoning of that. Now, whatever entity has control over it, they're going to have they have all three entities, South Hutch, and the county, have requirements in terms of waste and all those things that will have to be followed for anything that goes in there. And in terms of the ETJ, like I said, I think at the meetings I've been at or the discussions I've had, I think it's assumed or discussed that South Hutch will continue to have authority outside of what gets annexed going forward. And if the city of Hutch wanted to try and use ETJ themselves, they would have to come back to this board and ask permission to do that.
So does the county establish the ETJ?
We don't establish the ETJ. The city has that right, but there's, for an island annexation, it would have to come back to us. If the city of South Hutch, they have the right to unilaterally do ETJ for anything 3 miles within their boundary line.
So it's an option the city has up to 3 miles. They don't have to take the option.
Correct. It used to be 1 mile, and then the legislature gave them 3 miles, and so some cities didn't go all the way to 3 miles. Some have. It's a decision that those entities have to make one by one. Some cities don't use anything outside their boundaries. You see everything.
Because this is an island annexation, they would have to come to us if they want to exercise the ETJ.
Correct. The city of Hutchinson would.
Okay.
The city of South Hutchinson still wouldn't because it's not an island for them. It's contiguous.
Okay. So how does that work when you have overlapping jurisdictions?
It's one of those. I would say it's one of those situations that's rare because it is confusing and strange to have it. You almost always see the situation of this kind of thing with an industrial park, and it's almost always a situation similar to this where because there's industrial use, and if you think about it, typically industrial uses are often further away from residential uses. So a lot of times cities that have utilities want the industry a little bit further from the city's residences, right? I mean, it's kind of logical, but then what that creates is this gap in between. So this would not be the only place in the state of Kansas by any stretch that has one city going to one place, and then a city of Hutchinson, South Hutchinson, Hutchinson happening. I mean, other cities have one city, another city, but it's unusual. But the reason why we have this statute is because sometimes it is a good option for development.
Okay, and so right now, is that land in South Hutch's ETJ, and they've invoked that, right?
I believe it is. So part of it is, and part of it's not. Sorry.
Okay, and so you're south of the property, is that right?
I am,
Okay.
no, I am east of
Okay.
the property.
You're north of Trails West, correct?
I am on Trail West.
Yeah, but your residence on the
On the north
North side,
side of
yes.
Trail West,
And then
yes,
to ETJ.
yes, sir. Yeah.
Okay, so just to be clear, this is an island annexation. There's options for the city of Hutch to establish an ETJ around that. They have not invoked that, and they would have to bring that back here for approval.
Yes, that's not before you guys this morning.
Okay.
That's,
So before us this morning is an annexation request from the city. It's an island annexation, which requires our consent.
it requires your finding that it will not inhabit growth.
Okay.
I'm splitting hairs slightly, but that is a distinction.
Okay. Growth. That's the factor here. Okay. Did that help you with your question?
It does help me a little bit, but I guess, of course, I don't want it. I don't want it in our community, and to say we're not a residence closer to the city of Hutch or South Hutch, but we still have our community. It's just that our houses are a half mile apart or a mile apart, but that's still a residence to us. And if you don't want it in a residential area,
Well, so just to clarify a couple other things, what we're doing is simply putting this within the city of Hutch's jurisdiction. Anything that was placed on this parcel would likely require some zoning permit of some sort from the city. I'm seeing nods from the city. So, and that's generally the point in time where objecting landowners that are adjacent or close to the actual use would object. And so we're not making a decision or a finding here on what will be placed. We don't know, and it's not for sure if anything will be placed on there. So I do think, Ms. Drake, you'll have ample opportunity to object to any sort of investment on that property through the zoning process. And the city's here. The city manager, the mayor, vice mayor, they're all here. Do you want to clarify anything? Make sure we're all on the same page. Yeah. So, Mayor, feel free to come up.
That's right. I'll try to be as succinct as I can. I'm John Richardson, Mayor of the City of Hutchinson. So the City of Hutchinson's role in this is we have a resource that's usable for marketing a property like this for industrial use. That really it's more of what we can bring to the table and to bring that water to the property, or just to say we can for marketing the property for industrial use. We have to go through this process of annexation. It also puts us obligated to look at policing and fire, which the fire aspect is somewhat, we're already kind of there, but the policing aspect of this property, if something gets developed on it. But, we're not in the process or have any interest in the extra costs and time to go outside of this island. Island annexation is not something that we typically want to do. It's just with this situation, it's kind of an oddball situation that if we're going to provide water to this industrial park for for the benefit of our overall community, which is the mindset that we have to go through this process.
Okay.
But there are processes down the road in regards to how that property is developed to have public comment, public input, and buy-in for the city planning and zoning and city council on how that property gets developed. There are further tools for the public to come to the table and voice their opinion on it.
Is the city out to purchase the entire section?
The city is not in the position to purchase any of it. It's an annexation. It's still privately owned.
Okay. Okay.
I don't know if any other questions.
Questions
And
for the mayor?
Speaking on intent.
Yeah. So just to kind of bring it all back here, today we are in a process to approve or disapprove based on the findings of, will this help the growth of this particular area? Yes or no? If it's yes, then we approve. We send it back to the city for their approval. Is that?
And I grimace at the approval word because it feels to everyone, it feels like it's an approval, yeah.
Somebody turned the bell on and Commissioner Bogner has something to say.
Oh, okay.
I was going to address that.
I'm just saying, we'll let Patrick
I'll move
finish.
quickly. It feels like approval, but under the statute, which
I don't know how to shut that off.
Now when I screw up on technology.
I really can't top that in terms of statutory interpretation. But but the statute limits the commissioners to the only factor you're supposed to be evaluating today is finding on growth. And although other things like it's not a lack of sympathy for residential people in the area, but that is really what the statute says you guys are required to focus on.
So it's a finding rather than an approval.
And this would, if you find that it doesn't limit growth, it goes back in front of the city council, and I would make sure everyone at that meeting is very clear on what the process would be going forward with an entity interested in that property and how the public interacts with that with the city of Hutchinson.
So I just need to wait.
I want to make sure that everyone that's involved in the area is very clear on what tools are available for public input on anything that potentially would be on that property. And again, all we're doing is trying to create something that is marketable as an industrial park, and it's not marketable unless it has water availability.
Commissioner Bogner.
I'll sit down.
Well,
You're
Patrick, in his ending remarks, pretty much made the point I wanted to make that we up here, I know I don't know what's planned for there, and but long and the short of it is, by statute, we can only find on one thing, and that's whether it impedes the growth of a city next to it. And that's the only thing by statute that we can talk about today, or our opinion on what may or may not go there isn't involved in that. So as a group today, if I understand right, and I think Patrick made it clear there, that that's our one and only thing we can do today. And then, and it's been brought forward by the city of Hutch and private citizens. And that's our one thing we can decide on. And then it's back in their court, and it'll be handled by them and not this group. Is that pretty much correct understanding?
Yes, yes, Commissioner.
Well, thank you. I just wanted to make that clear. We don't have much to say in this whole deal other than this one item.
Commissioner Parks.
Deborah, would you mind? Speak to the fact that we're obviously talking about hindrance of growth, what the possibilities of using this industrial park could mean to South Hutchinson County.
Sure.
I know not necessarily a project there, but I'm just, what would happen in that area maybe?
Well, it really goes back to the reason that we thought it was important to look to the future of growth along the K96 corridor and the types of projects that could come. My only basis for being able to answer that is that over the last 3 years, the sizes of projects that we're looking at the state of Kansas that we get an opportunity to see and submit Reno County on were becoming larger in scope, and they were requiring larger acreages, which makes one think it's larger industry. Natural industries that look at our area are manufacturing, because we are a state that prides itself on being able to build things well. And we're a very affordable location, and we're at the cross section of some great infrastructure. So most of the time, manufacturing looks at places that have great highway access, that have excellent rail access, and this is along the Watco rail line, which affords whomever might locate there the ability to work with a significant short line rail provider that then gives them connectivity to both the BNSF and the Union Pacific. So I think it could lend itself to an industry that would bring good jobs and good paying jobs to the area. And so that's what we've been focused on, is where in Reno County can we do that aligns all of that, as well as being able to be at a place that you can also get power and water. And so the pipeline of projects, Lacey, our economic development manager, responds on behalf of Reno County to projects of that nature. And so generally they would be in the manufacturing sector.
Yeah. Well, I just wanted you to clarify that for folks. I think that's good information. Could you see it developing towards South Hutch later on, you think, in your scope?
I think that the benefit to the whole corridor is that jobs along that corridor are going to then lead to hopefully more residents, more housing, more commercial development, support for restaurants and gas stations and things already in South Hutchinson, but I could see that corridor opening up for growth. And Highway 50 and K96 are built in such a way that it's built for this. It's built for this for the future. And Reno County is part of the K96 corridor coalition that has gone back for many years. I might say a couple of decades, based on the vision of counties and cities that said K96, now a 4-lane corridor, deserves to have its day in the sun of development and growth, and we want to be a part of that. And that was Harlan Priddle's vision when he was part of the forming and idea phase of the K96 Corridor Coalition. And, things have happened along the corridor, but we think this really could be something that puts Reno County on the map in a big way to be able to, determine our own destiny for what Reno County might be for the future. Yeah.
Thank you, Deborah.
And we lost Harlan yesterday. I don't know if you heard that news. Harlan passed away yesterday, and just saw that news last night. And he was a visionary for Kansas. He served in our state in both the Department of Agriculture as well as the Department of Commerce as a former Secretary of Commerce. He was a visionary that cared deeply about Reno County, and he was a mentor to many of us. And when he was here in March, he spoke to that group, and he was looking forward to seeing what was becoming the idea of this industrial park, and it becoming something that really could benefit the whole K96 corridor. So I'm glad we had this opportunity to have this conversation today, because he had said, when you have a groundbreaking on that site, I want to be there. And he's not going to get to see that day, but he really appreciated the work we were doing to make that possible. Yeah.
Okay. Commissioner Hurst.
That hits pretty hard, because I work with Harlan on establishing the K96 corridor. And Deborah, you hit it right. His visionary, he could see things that other people couldn't see with the possibilities. So condolences to his family. Like Don and Patrick have said, our position here is to find that it will not hinder growth of the cities. And I look at this as the fact that the growth in the Hutchinson and Reno County, and in case of many small communities, has decreased. We've had a negative growth. And if we can provide the opportunity to increase our asset base so that taxes won't have to keep going up, without reducing services, then I think we can see part of Harlan's vision by understanding that this will not hinder any growth, that it has the possibilities, pretty high, I'm hoping high possibilities, to ensure some growth within Reno County. I know the small towns of Haven, Pretty Prairie, Partridge, Hutchinson, South Hutchinson, bigger towns, have that opportunity because they're only minutes away from, if they choose to build and own a house in there, they're just minutes away from their job with an easy travel. Where a larger city might not have that easy travel and might take much more minutes. So I can see the asset base when a project does get in here, and it will go through the proper processes. ETJ in that area is within South Hutch's ETJ on most part. And then the proper processes will go through, as the mayor, John, said, that it will be their zoning, and then that will go through their proper processes, ma'am, to where public hearing is held and people have an opportunity at that point to find out what possibilities are coming in there and can state their concerns. And the property, you know, that they're looking at, correct me if I'm wrong, but that would be the only specific zoning. It wouldn't include any zoning outside of that 400 and some acres. And so that is still under the control of planning and zoning of Reno County. So it would not affect your change in your zoning on your property. Thank you.
Hey, thanks for the opportunity to come forward and talk to you guys. This is my first one.
Thank you.
So Merry Christmas.
Yeah, Merry Christmas. Mr. Weitzel?
Is there anybody here from the city of South Hutchinson? I didn't see anybody. Okay, so so when I saw this coming before us on December 13th, my thought was, you know, is this something that is trying to get put through before the three new elected city council members of the city of South Hutch get on? And so, you know, I'm a conspiracy theorist, and so that's the way my mind works. And so, I called all three of them and heard back from, or spoke to all three of them. Then there was a meeting, and I heard back from one of them saying that that they all three were satisfied that that this was not going to inhibit the growth of the city of South Hutchinson. And I said, well, hey, if you guys have anything to say, you know, you ought to be here this morning. And the person that got back to me said, yeah, if we decide there's anything to say, then one of us will be here. So the fact that none of them have decided to come says to me that there's not going to be that at least 3/5 of the upcoming city council believes that at least independently, because I don't think they talk to each other, but I talked to all three of them, thinks that there's not a hindrance to growth there. So that'll be the basis of my decision.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Weitzel. Excuse me. And there's other folks from the city here. I assume Mayor covered your points. And okay, thank you. It seems like the one thing we've identified here is that through this process, we ought to help educate the public on how they can be involved in the decision making going forward. And it sounds like that's a standard zoning process. And if the city can detail that a little bit when they reconvene on this topic, it might be helpful for adjacent landowners. But hearing no other questions, is there a motion to approve or make the finding as recommended?
I will motion to approve that. The findings of no interference with growth and allowing the annex for the city.
Commissioner Parks moves. Is there a second? Second by Commissioner Hurst. Any final discussion? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Commissioner Hertz?
Yes.
Commissioner Parks?
Yes.
Commissioner Bogner?
Yes.
Commissioner Weitzel?
Yes.
Commissioner Friesen?
Yes, motion passes 5-0. Thanks, everybody, for being here. Appreciate the city coming this morning in the chamber and the public comment. Thank you. So item 7C is a item from the IT department, purchase of CrowdStrike EDR security software. Department Director Mike Matthews is here. Mike?
Morning, Commissioners. Mike Matthews, I Technology Director. I thank you for entertaining this offer this morning. We, I think, as most of you know, that cybersecurity is probably the #1 thing in IT today. And, you know, the threats are just continuous. They never stop. And, you know, with the advent of AI, they're even more sophisticated and more difficult for us to defend. So we come to CrowdStrike through the state of Kansas judicial data compromise. They, at one point, we're talking about applying that to all of the district court computers that we maintain, which would have removed our ability to control security on those machines. So that's why we started looking at it. They have since backed off of that a little bit. Well, so we, but at that point we were in the process of reviewing this and seeing if it was a good fit for our entire organization. As we went through it, it became immediately clear that we needed it. It would increase our data protection tenfold. So we went through the process of doing a demonstration. We have it installed on all of our computers right now, running it through a test. It is performed very, very well. We have, you know, as you know, it's impossible for us to stop every piece of spam, every piece of phishing email. We just can't do it. So we think that this is the best way for us to protect our data, protect our network. We're not only protecting it from our own people that might inadvertently click on something, we're protecting it from the millions of people on the outside that are trying to get in. We've been using WebRoot as our antivirus, and it's fine for antivirus. But today you need endpoint detection and remediation. And what this software will do is, if a machine becomes infected in some way, this software will identify that immediately and isolate that computer off of the network so that whatever that malware is cannot move laterally, cannot spread. Well, then what happens is, if we're here, we'll get notification of that. We can go out and remediate the machine and clean it up, put it back on the network, and go forward. But the beauty of this is they have a 24/7 office that monitors all this. So if we're not here, they're going to see it, and they will do the remediation and clean it up, let us know what they did, and then we put the machine back on the network and get it going. So basically, it's like having a full-time 24-hour-a-day security technician on staff, maintaining all of that. So along with this is we're buying the level, it's called Falcon Complete. With that, if we were to have a breach, they would pay us $100,000. Now, I'm going to tell you that $100,000 in a breach is a drop in the bucket. But it does say that they stand behind their product. So that's kind of the short story. I don't know what kind of questions you might have. And I know it's a very difficult subject. It's taken some time for us to get our arms wrapped around it as well. But I'm having a hard time putting it into more layman terms than that. So I'd be willing to answer any questions or try to give you any more information that you need. The product is $112,000, a little over that. Let me open that up. We will be getting some reimbursement from law enforcement at the city and from the district court. So we will wind up with a $86,576 expense to the county. Now, that being said, I negotiated them down from 133 to 112, and I got them to throw in a 13th month, so there'll be no expense in 24. The county will have the opportunity to budget for it for 25.
Mike, is this is an annual premium?
It would be an
for
annual
that?
expense, yes.
Yeah. How was the calculation for those other entities? Their percentage of use of that, or
It was by their device count, how many devices they have on our network. So we were able to take the per device costs and apply it to those machines, and that's how I come up with it.
you may not be at liberty to answer, but I think it'd be great information. Have we had a chance to see it in action and work?
We have. We had a situation right after we got our trial that happened on a Saturday. We had not applied it to the device yet that we had the instance, but we didn't know about it until Monday. Had we had this, we'd have known it exactly then. But as soon as we applied this software to that machine that we thought had a compromise, it found it, told us right away what to do, and we moved forward. And at that point, we had a lot of things that we didn't understand about it, and CrowdStrike was able to come in, look at all the data, tell us what we had, and let us know how big of a problem we had, or if we had one at all. It was really impressive, I thought. So,
will this seek to decrease any of your gray hair?
I'm afraid that's gone already, Randy.
Sorry, Mike. Well, I mean, I'm not one to gripe when you want to protect what the assets are, because it could be huge if something happened. I understand that. But, man, I wish we could see where the industry goes, because it's just on and on and on, and it never stops. And you never get rid of a program, it seems like to me. I wanted to, maybe you could answer to that. We add stuff, but nothing ever falls off in prescriptions for a year, and it escalates to almost a ridiculous amount.
I will say that with this, we will discontinue use of 2 products.
Okay.
Now, we're only going to save about $20,000. It's not going to make up the difference. But we will discontinue the use of WebRoot, and then we have another product called Aristotle Insight that we'll no longer need to use either. So we will be dropping off two items here.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Any other questions? Yeah, I mean, this to me feels like an insurance policy of sorts. It's a pretty expensive premium. It is a real risk, a pretty high risk. I think we've seen incidents with cities, counties, hospitals, the state, the judiciary obviously had a huge problem with this. That was way more expensive than any sort of premium. So this seems like the best alternative. So I mean, I'm in the technology space and understand this stuff somewhat. Trust the recommendation here. I think it's fair to say it's really expensive.
It is, and if I didn't believe in it, but I'm not one that wants to spend a lot of money.
But I think your point of like, hey, the bad guys are using artificial intelligence against us, and so we need artificial intelligence platforms to counteract it. It's a very real and fair point, and especially government tends to be behind the curve on innovation, and criminals are way ahead of the curve, and so getting us in front and not like it could be hugely expensive if we miss something. So
I seen a stat that said for every record that you lose in a breach, it would cost you $167. So if we took a population of 61,000 and we only lost one record for each of those people, I think it was over $10 million.
Then it's a little disappointing when you see, you know, hospitals and healthcare agencies that are losing our private information these days, and it's like nobody even cares about it. Like I care about it. I care about, you know, and we house probably not as sensitive of information, but certainly employment records and law enforcement records are pretty sensitive things, and we have a duty to protect those. So appreciate your forward thinking here. I have two suggestions. One is it's perfect time of the year to negotiate one more time, and you can blame it on the commission for complaining about the price. Randy said he didn't like the price, so tell him Commissioner Parks is not very happy.
Yeah, that would be a lot.
But it is like end of the year. Everybody's trying to make year-end numbers. I know you went at them a couple times. You know, if you can go at them one more time, I think that would be good. Commissioner Parks' point of like, I think you were kind of inferring like, where is this headed? If we are confident we're going to use this for multi-year, you know, having a maximum escalation clause in the agreement, like 4% or something.
I did talk to them about that and told them, and what they told me is they keep it between 2.5% and 4%.
Okay. We'll just get it in writing, and because if you don't get it in writing,
yeah, I know,
somebody wants to make the next year end numbers, and it's 8%. So and they'll get you hooked. Like if this thing works, they'll want to increase it 20%.
Well, and I think also, you know, this all come at us pretty quickly with the state's issue, and we didn't have a lot of time. So I also think that next year the county will have some time to do some review and make some maybe different decisions also. But I felt it was important enough, and our antivirus is running out here in 2 weeks, and so we kind of needed to do something right away.
All right. Is there a motion to approve as recommended?
Yes, I would move to approve the recommendation from IT Director to purchase of CrowdStrike EDR security software with the comments that try to a maximum of $112,693.33 with instructions given to see if we can't improve what it cost us. And an escalation clause is written. Okay.
Thank you, Commissioner Hurst. Is there a second? I'll second that. Any other discussion? Nope. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Hurst?
Yes.
Commissioner Parks?
Yes.
Commissioner Bogner?
Yes.
Commissioner Whitesall?
Yes.
Commissioner Friesen?
Yes. Motion passes 5-0.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. Okay, item 7D is, you know, I asked Patrick to kind of research this. There's a lot of different information coming. Some of it feels like it has substance. Some of it feels like it's, you know, politically charged. So, you know, I think there's at least a few commissioners that may want to put something in writing related to this issue. And I just asked Patrick to kind of brief us on your research on the topic. What are options? What, if we do something, what effect does it have?
Thank you, Commissioners. You know, this was a big meeting for me to prep, and so this probably until a few days ago didn't get my full attention. But I've I've thought, given it some thought even since I drafted this background. So what 30 by 30 refers to commonly a federal executive order from early in 2017 that generally said that there should be a policy goal in the United States to get to 30% of conserved land and water by the year 2030. Some people interpreted that as potentially meaning more voluntary conservation programs such as CRP. Some people also interpreted it as potentially being involuntary conservation programs, maybe like more national forests or national parks. So it was fairly controversial from the beginning. It was never funded, and it was never actually enacted in any legislation or specific policies. I could not point you to a specific law that changed as a result of the 30 by 30. However, and so for that reason, and because in general terms, county government and federal government don't interact that often, i.e. when we tell the federal government what to do, they don't usually listen. However, at the KAC, I was at some different discussions, and 3030 came up, and I was kind of reminded or learned that a lot of the federal agencies in charge of federal lands, such as the Bureau of Land Management and some of the national parks, are required by their charter to consider the wishes of local government entities in the areas that they are operating. So what that means is there is supposed to be, in terms of the federal agencies that might administer public lands, they're supposed to listen if someone sends them a directive to do something or not do something. So for that reason, you're seeing a lot of counties that are concerned about involuntary conservation in their county by the federal government pass resolutions saying, hey, we are not in favor of involuntary conservation programs. Please don't do them to us. And so I could draft something along those lines for the commission to pass, and then we would send it to some of the federal agencies that are involved in conservation. That's more or less my briefing on it.
Great. Questions?
We had some discussion also at the KAC about this, and the one thing I would suggest is, including in this, if you can, is to talk about trails, include trails in that, because that's something that could absolutely affect Reno County as well as many others. I've had another county, McPherson County, so when we decide on this, if we decide on this, to send them a copy of our resolution. And yes, we can't tell them what to do, but I appreciated that research that said that it does have, local governments does have a say, a little bit of a say, at least.
Commissioner Bogner?
Well, one thing that's been brought up a lot of times, it's private monies offered to our certain government entities to do certain projects on conservation lands. Recently in the Rural Messenger, Trent Luce brought up a fine example of that, where they're getting rid of windbreaks and stuff on government properties in Nebraska, and that was funded by private individuals, private companies. But those particular agencies did take that money, and it's being used that way. I think some of those areas are where the problem comes in. You talked about funding. There is a number out there. It escapes me right now, but it's fairly large yearly federal monies appropriated to certain conservation deals that would fall into these categories we're trying to slow up. We definitely, in my opinion, need a resolution of some sort, and I think you're headed in the right direction with the keeping it voluntary instead of involuntary. I mean, people have their rights and should retain those rights, but that's just my thought on it. So getting into a little further, I'd be completely for it.
Slightly, I guess maybe that's somewhat editorial for me, but it goes back to my private practice days where I had some of my farming ranch clients that did voluntarily do a conservation easement and wanted it, but that's very different than other ones that got condemned for an easement or some other thing. So I think, to me, that's an important distinction. CRP program is voluntary. Some people like it, some people don't, and just, in my opinion, but that's slightly editorial. I try not to impose myself.
Commissioner Hurst? Nope.
Yeah, the conservation easement's a whole different situation than what this 3030. You never can tell what the president's going to make an executive order, and their EPA is going to do something, and it's just, we don't get a say. There's a place for the conservation easements because it does facilitate use of the land and also for future generations.
Commissioner Weitzel?
Yeah, so in the people that I spoke to, another benefit of the county doing this is my understanding is that when they go to Washington D.C., they say, oh, we talked to all these people in Kansas and everybody is for it and there's no opposition to it. Whereas if we pass a resolution saying we don't want this involuntary use of our land, then the people that are on the other side of it can say, well, these counties passed resolutions against it, so it's obviously not as popular as is being told. And so that was one of the benefits that I understood, which is why I'd be for something.
I completely agree with that. I hadn't really thought of that until I went to the conference, but the federal agencies, when they take big actions, are required to go through a review, and they are required to state what the local position is.
Well, it sounds like there's unanimous consensus here to direct staff to draft something for our further review, a resolution that signals that the county is not interested in federal policy or regulation that involuntarily changes the rights of private property owners. So I think you've got something in the works, Patrick, and our conversation was let's make sure we're all on the same page. It sounds like we are. So if you want to draft something for our review, that'd be great. Commissioner Hurst?
I don't know whether you can include anything about taking it out of the tax base or not, but that's one of the things that it's really come up, is that potential to take it away from our tax base.
And if commission thinks anything else, you can just send it to Patrick, and we'll try to get it on agenda next time or soon. Sound good? Okay. Thank you, Patrick. Item 7E is the resolution to extend the solar moratorium based on directive from the last meeting. Appreciate staff is always moving quickly, and we got one resolution out, and then got another one out that kind of clarified a few things, and so in front of you is an amended resolution that provides some directive to the county planning and zoning board for their continued work on this issue. Primarily, it extends the moratorium another 6 months, provides some clarity on our need to review material impact to the county on these issues, and then also clarify that retail net metering, which is kind of your general smaller usage, whether it's on the ground or on a building, is not part of what we're working on here. So you have anything else you want to add?
I do. I've been talking way too much today, but I was thinking about this, and I'd like to just briefly kind of take us a step back, or maybe a real quick 1,000-foot view of where we're at in line of solar zoning. So I think at the last meeting, Commissioner Friesen mentioned the constitutional issues with zoning, and I kind of pondered that afterwards, and I didn't really talk about it last week, but I think it's worth talking about. So any zoning the county does at any time is in a sense a government taking of a property right, or an adjustment of a property right. So the Constitution does require due process whenever that happens. It doesn't mean that it's wholly appropriate to do it from time to time. There are lots of things that zoning is necessary for, But it does mean that we have to make sure we follow a due process. And I think where we're at in Reno County on solar zoning is with a novel land use that we haven't dealt with in a while. We're going through a very long and messy due process period. But what we are doing is following a process and giving people the chance to speak on it. We've given that at the zoning board level, we've given it at the commission level, and now we're kind of extending that. So the important thing so again, the point I'm trying to make is, when it comes to zoning and changing our regulations, the key isn't that it's not just about whether we do it or not, it's to make sure that we follow a process that allows public input and procedure. The moratorium came about at the beginning of the year because we needed time to make a process. We needed to do this process, and so we put a moratorium in place so that we could have time to do it without getting a permit. When I was at the KAC, one of the things they stressed was it's important to not use a moratorium to just indefinitely end the conversation on something, but it's to use the moratorium to do our due diligence. And that is exactly why we're asking planning and zoning and myself are asking to extend it. We're not finished yet. We are absolutely working in good faith to get regulations. If we get them done before July 1st, we can remove the moratorium early. I know there's been consternation with having the planning and zoning do a public hearing and then having commissioners give input and then sending it and then having them work on it more. However, that is due process in action. There are many things people can say about solar issues in Reno County, but they cannot say that there have not been a lot of opportunities for the public to be heard on it. So that's kind of my soapbox on this. What you have before you, Commissioner Friesen stated all the things that are in this correctly. It does remove some of the smaller uses, which is what we discussed last time. There's no moratorium over those. But it does keep that moratorium on what we're defining as commercial use so that we can continue to look at the regs.
Questions? Commissioner Bogdan?
Yeah, not only on this project here, but on one comment on this that I got from a voter was that about the due process. And the claim in the communication was that due process hadn't been done and there hadn't been a public hearing. We all know that there was a public hearing, and in the due process, the people we have in charge did publish that in the paper, which is mandated by law. We as a group decided a long time ago that we would be more transparent. We further had that on the county website, meeting times, what it was, agendas. So it goes back to what we've discussed many times. When there's comments made like that, we've actually complied and went far beyond what we needed to do to comply. It's just that we cannot make the people look at the website, pick up a paper and read. They've got to take some responsibility themselves. And because we have gone beyond what is required in this county. That's the only comment I want to make on the subject.
Anything else?
One thing when this comes up, I always make sure to make it not only the distinction with the public hearing, but people use public meeting and public hearing kind of interchangeably. All of the planning and zoning meetings are public in that anyone can watch them, anyone can see what happens to them. And then in addition to that, there are public hearings where not only can you watch, but you can participate and speak at it. So all those opportunities are available to the public.
Is there a motion to approve?
I do have a comment.
Commissioner Parks.
Maybe a further explanation of the moratorium for me, because will this hinder the development of solar regs in any way? We took a step back the last meeting because we had decided collectively as a board we wanted to look more towards banning commercial solar. That was what was said in the meeting collectively. and because of after the input from all the public hearings, because the planning department had worked for quite a few months developing something in a direction that wasn't the direction we felt we wanted to go. So now they're backing up. In doing the moratorium, I want to make sure that that doesn't happen twice, because they spent an enormous amount of hours and put off other projects to try to develop this to get it ready for the county, and yet they took a step back to start over again, and I don't want to see that happen twice. So I need an answer to that, I guess, as to what this will do to the development process, and maybe Dawn would be a good one to input along with you, Patrick, in this.
I mean, the moratorium isn't necessary. Without a moratorium, we could get a permit request right away.
I understand that.
So that's why that's there. In terms of the planning process, I'll let Don talk about it. The reason why it's going to get extended is because the commission nothing is one point I want to make. No regs are finalized in Reno County on solar. Nothing has finally been decided at this point. The Planning Commission had worked up a draft that they were considering recommending to the commission, but it never was recommended to the commission. And now I believe Don can talk where they're at, but they are looking at direction, based on the direction they've received, they're going to look at redrafting. This body can't tell them exactly what to do, and that you cannot dictate to them what to do, but it's fair for you guys to give some communication as to kind of what parameters you're looking at. Eventually, the Planning Commission, which is an independent body, goes through the process, and makes a recommendation to you guys. You might like what they recommend. You might not like what they recommend. If you like it, you adopt it. If you don't like it, you send it back to them. It could theoretically go on quite some time. I don't know what will happen.
Okay.
Do you have anything to add, Don?
Don Britton, Director of Reno County Public Works. So what my understanding was from the last meeting is that we have been working on regulations for commercial solar, large scale commercial solar for the last several months. And that we was directed to not do that anymore for large scale commercial solar because it was the flavor of the day for that day that we was not going to allow that countywide, but that decision hadn't been voted on yet. But we was to continue creating regulations for small scale solar, such as the Arc Valleys of the world stuff. And you wanted to look at setbacks and stuff for private solar at that time. That's what we've been instructed. This is the way I hear it. Was that correct?
That's pretty much what I understood.
So at this point on, at the next meeting, we're not going to be working on large-scale solar regulations in anticipation that you're going to not allow it. But we're going to work on the smaller scale solar, and you wanted to see private if we wanted to regulate private, and you wanted to see that.
We'll see what everybody else has to say, but I don't think that we wanted to, I don't think, at least from my standpoint, and I think that's kind of consensus, you can tell me if I'm wrong, is when you build up, I don't think that we want to be involved in regulations for people that put it up on there. There's other regulations out there. If they want to put it on the rooftop, if they want to put it on the side of a building, whatever. That I'm not sure. I think that you summed it up pretty well, I think, is what an individual property owner out there and his neighbor, proper setbacks to allow what the Planning and Zoning Commission feels is a proper setback, whether it's 0 or 5 or 10 or 20 feet from a, say, person out there owns 5 acres or 25 acres and wants to put it on. But it should be able to be utilized by an individual homeowner if they want it, a business owner if they want to do this, and an electric co-op used for their members or for their owner without going out of county, net metering, as you say.
Yeah, on the residential, what I understood that you wanted to hear is for you wasn't concerned on anything mounted on roofs, but you wanted to see whether you wanted to regulate residential based on pole-mounted solar and those setbacks. So it was, what I heard is you possibly want to regulate private, and you want to see those setbacks when they're pole-mounted.
I mean, wouldn't that already be covered? Like you don't identify every single thing somebody can put on their property. You just, I mean, it's generally like, hey, if you put a building, it has to be set back this far. If you put a fence, like, do we have to call out solar? I mean, isn't it already, as a structure of sorts covered?
Well, we have setbacks for buildings, and do we have setbacks for flagpoles? Do we have setbacks for propane tanks? Do we have setbacks for that? No.
Yeah.
So it's a decision whether you want to have regulations for private solar setbacks.
I don't. I think it should just kind of fall in if you can put a shed there, or if you can put a flagpole there, like this is rural county residents. So I personally don't think we need to spend a lot of effort, segmenting. And to me, there's like 3 segments. There's kind of what we tried to carve out here is, if it applies for net metering, which generally, if you look at like Evergy, I think residential usage can only, qualify for up to 20 kW. Commercials maybe 50, and I think educational is 100. Those are pretty small installations. I mean, we have a 50 kW installation in Bueller. I mean, it's, I don't know, a third of an acre or something. Middle of town in an industrial area. It doesn't bother anybody. Never had any complaints. But I think if it just needs to, I would suggest it just fits in with current regulations, and we don't kind of, create new rules just for solar, because it's generally at small scale, pretty has limited impact in the county. But so you have net metering, you have what's in between there, which is something up to about 2 megawatt, and then you have 2 megawatt on. And so I think, I think the majority of the commission has said that they don't want 2 megawatt or higher. I'm still reserved on that related to, private property use, but I think I'm outnumbered. So you are correct. There isn't, or Randy, Commissioner Parks, you are correct. And it doesn't say, nothing in here says that the commission has directed the planning commission to prohibit commercial solar above 2 megawatts. I think that's the consensus of the majority here, and I think, Don, you're hearing that, and that's what you articulated. So we need to be more clear. I think we could.
Well, the moratorium prevents those bigger ones than 2 megawatts from happening in the meantime between now and July 1st.
I'm just saying, there's nothing in here that says planning commission, we're done with 2 megawatt or higher.
So I know this is the kind of thing, the legalities of this due process thing we're talking about is this board can signal to them what you want to see, but they do have the independence to send to you what they want. And then you have the right to say no and veto it and send it back to them. Now, in the interest of everyone's time, we don't want to do that loop forever. But so I think it's been good to have communication back to them.
Okay.
But that's where we're at.
Well, I think we've balanced it well in the resolution. I think I think, Don, you've articulated pretty clearly that the majority of the commission is not going to support effort or regulation that permits things over 2 megawatts. So I think you're right on that. Doesn't say it in here specifically, but I think that's a good balance of us not, interfering with your work, but telling you, don't waste your time, right? So then you're saying, what do we do with 2 megawatts or less? And I think you've said we're going to create some, in my opinion, a light touch regulation on that issue would be appropriate. And then I would suggest, again, in my opinion, that we don't spend a lot of time on the net metering. Anything that qualifies for net metering, we allow people to kind of use that within the constraints of existing structure, setbacks, and so forth. If we can use what we already have, I think that would be better than creating yet another regulation just for solar. What's the rest of the commission think?
That's kind of why I opened the conversation and wanted Don up here, because if we are allowed to give input, I think the exact direction, and maybe I could be wrong in layman's terms, is we continue on with letting the small solar go on houses, buildings, those kinds of things, which currently happen within the confines of permitting and setbacks, and then work on these smaller up to 10-acre fields. And my feel was that and my understanding is it's going to take further action after we get that policy to look at a countywide ban, because it's in certain areas it would only affect, and that would have to happen after the fact, if I'm correct.
So
maybe I spoke
no, you didn't
stuff
speak
we
wrong.
shouldn't say, but
no. I think I was gonna, the whole concept of the countywide ban. Again, this is why I kind of framed it at the beginning to talk about the due process. We have the zoned portion of the county. First of all, Reno County is unique in that we have a zoned portion, unzoned portion, and that's a whole other conversation. But in the zoned portion, I know exactly what the due process looks like. It's to go through the zoning board. In the unzoned portion, in my research and opinion, based on research and talking to people, the commissioners would need to follow some sort of due process before you outright ban a land use in unzoned Reno County. I'm not exactly sure what I think that is, and I think I would like to look. I asked Shonda to provide me with what we did, what was done for wind, and follow the similar procedure, because I think that's held up under some litigation. So there have been other unzoned counties where there's no zoning in the county and they just kind of do it. But I don't think that's appropriate in Reno County. I'd like to, if that's what you want to pursue, again, we need to get direction. We need to we're going to have to follow a process. I know, and nobody wants to follow a process, but that's what we have to do, and we can look into what that is.
Well, it seems like we've pushed the pause button across the county on this issue, so we have time to address that. So, Don, you will not be able to produce a perfect set of regulations that we're not going to make a few adjustments on. So appreciate the work of your staff and the planning commission. I know it's been a little herky-jerky, but does this provide a good set of guidance for you?
Yeah, yes, I have one question. So it's clear that we don't need to go through creating large-scale solar regulations, from what I hear. My question is on residential, there is nothing that we're regulating mounted on buildings or houses. So do you want to regulate something that's mounted on a pole for residential? Because if you don't, we don't need to waste our time creating regulations for residential.
Well, what do we have in place today with what's similar? I'm trying to think if a building, would be even more kind of obstructive than a solar field, in my opinion.
You can have a building within 10 foot of the property line.
Well, then my opinion is you could have a solar.
So do you want to regulate and say that it can't be any closer than 10 foot, a pole in the ground?
If you can build a 20-foot building 10 feet away from
35
the property,
foot.
30, okay. I think there's no reason you couldn't put a solar field at that distance. It's no more impeding, if less, in my opinion.
Well, and Ron's talked about the solar voltaic stuff, and that's gonna have to be on poles.
Yeah.
So yeah, I've got no objection to that. I did want to speak to Mr. Schwartz's comment, and I was kind of thinking the same thing over these last 3 weeks, was that, pretty well everybody that spoke out against the commercial solar at that meeting was talking about in the Cheney watershed area. And so I know I'm in the minority on this, but it's a very small minority. It's a very big minority because I think there's 2 of us in this minority. But, do we really want to regulate? Do we really want to ban solar in the rest of the county when that's really, it seems like, what most people are concerned with? So, but that's my 2 cents. I think Mr. Schwartz is right on his assessment on that. But yeah, as far as regulating, solar on poles, I think same as a building would be fine.
So, okay, so you want a pole, a private solar panel pole to be at least 10 foot to match what a building is?
I would just,
because we have to create that regulation.
I would just amend your definition of a building to include.
We can make that another accessory to where it'll fall in that. Another thing that the Planning and Zoning Commission will have to deal with is the Cheney watershed. When you take in western Reno County, the Cheney watershed, and then you take a radius around Corbera, you're talking 50% of that entire portion of the county. So that's something that we'll be looking at. So I just want you guys to realize that.
And that also, that 50% doesn't take into account of waterways that are affected, that you can't build in. And also, seriously, you need to look at the fact that there's some wetlands that never should have anything on them. If you can't build a building in a wetland or a floodplain, why should you be able to build a solar panel or any other thing in that?
So if you're talking about the 10 acre or less and you don't want them in the Cheney watershed or around Corbera, or like Commissioner Hurst said, there's not much space left.
And that's what I'm getting at with regard to commercial, because there's not that much land available if you look at all of that.
I think you guys are using the right approach, trying to build a record. You're like, if there's environmental issues, if you can make your findings on that, bring them back to us. Like, I would disagree that like a floodplain isn't. You've got floodplain's pretty useless ground, and there's some opportunity to, you can put structures that have ability for water to flow underneath it, and I think you can do that with solar too. So,
well, I agree that nothing should be in a floodway. Floodplain is a huge area that may never get flooded.
Yeah.
That's a little bit different deal, especially if it's poles or something. But that's something up to the Planning and Zoning Commission. So what we're going to go back and do, we're going to create regulations for the smaller solar,
light touch,
10 acres or less, 2 megawatts or less, and see what we do about the residential, and that's what we're going to bring to you.
Sounds good. Thank you.
What's the resolution number?
Cindy?
2023-41.
41. And then I would suggest, it just keeps sticking out for me, electricity. I think we just meant.
This is like, usually I say like one thing in this
second,
meeting
whereas 2 megawatts of electricity, I think is what it.
Yeah, I'm sure it was
just a bit redundant.
I'm assuming that electricity refers to just electricity, but it's been a week.
Is there other types of electricity?
Well, in future development, that could be a smaller footprint yet that would develop that much power, so it might be less than 10 acres.
Small edit there. That's a Scrivener's error.
Is that 21 or 41?
41.
Okay. Well, I would move to approve Resolution 2023-41 as presented by staff.
2023. Motion by Hurst, second by Bogner. Any final discussion? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Commissioner Hurst?
Yes.
Commissioner Parks?
Yes.
Commissioner Bogner?
Yes.
Commissioner Weitzel?
Yes.
Commissioner Friesen?
Yes, motion passes 5-0. Thanks, Don. Tell the Planning Commission, thank you. I know it's probably a little annoying for us to be pushing and pulling, but they're doing good work. County Administrator report. Randy, you got a
Monthly reports are part of the attachment. Didn't know if there were any questions on those. It's for aging, public transit, appraiser, automotive clerk, community corrections, communications, emergency management, and the health department. If there's no questions on that, I wanted to, and I probably should have said it during, as you guys were talking about the annexation, I just wanted to publicly state that City of Hutchinson, City of South Hutchinson, and Reno County had a meeting earlier this week on Monday and talked about all three entities are going to be working on some kind of memorandum of understanding to show that all three are taking part in the industrial park project and pretty much want to do no harm to the other entities. So kind of Commissioner Weitzel, as you mentioned that the City of South Hutch has been in communication, that's part of it. Is City of Hutchinson has kind of commented that they want to partner and try to see what can be done so that all three entities are benefiting from any project that goes down there. So I just wanted to publicly state that. And then I wanted to mention, found out at the end of last week, maybe it was this week, that the Kansas Leadership Center has awarded Reno County as one of the recipients for the 2024 Leadership Transformation Grant that I had emailed everyone about. So we'll get some slots for a couple of the KLC sessions in 2024. So, and what that will cover is the cost of the class. It doesn't cover travel costs or books that may need to be purchased, just the tuition for those KLC classes. And that's all I had.
Hey, Patrick, you good?
I'm good.
Okay. Commission comments. I'm going to start on my right today. Commissioner Weitzel.
So affordable health care is one of those things that's talked about a lot. So I did want to inform the public, and I hope the media picks this up, that there are still 2 days left for people to go to healthcare.gov. That's the healthcare exchange, and see if they qualify for affordable health care if you can't get it through your job, or there's some things that you need to do to qualify. But I know for years I was on the exchange, and my $500 or $600 a month healthcare premium I paid out of pocket, anywhere between $0 and $100 depending on the year. So it's a good asset for people to use, and I just think a lot of people don't know that it's there and that you can, potentially find affordable health care without having to worry about the political maze of Medicaid expansion that hasn't happened and I don't think will happen anytime soon, at least not this year. So healthcare.gov, that's the official federal site to see if you qualify for a subsidy from the federal government to help pay for your health care. Open enrollment is through the 15th, so you've got 2 more days.
Thank you, Commissioner Weitzel. Commissioner Hurst.
I'm going to go into detail about any of I forgot. I've been good at it till just now. Won't go into detail about the committees I attended up to KAC, but one of them was the health, U.S. data infrastructure, maximizing the federal and the BIL Kansas grants. In that deal, there's over 400 programs, over 412 federal agencies. Now that's a pretty good challenge to find something that would work. In our commission group with small packing plants was definitely what the EPA has down there could potentially close about 5,300 small packing plants in the U.S. They're watching that very close. I attended the insurance, and it doesn't look like a possibility of our insurance going down any from what I got out of that meeting. Randy, I don't even... general session speakers were absolutely excellent. I think they were some of the better general session speakers that we had, in my opinion. I believe Carol Moore is involved in a K96 meeting that's coming up on January 12th, and it has to do with small city leadership. She's been part of the leadership group in that area. And so that's going to be on January 12th, K96 meeting. And I was disappointed that if one wants a position and agrees when to start, they should be ready to start and not want to wait a month or two. And that's all I have.
Thank you, Commissioner Hurst. Commissioner Parks?
A couple things came to mind. Oh, yep, I need microphone. A couple things come to mind. We had a Quad County meeting earlier this week over at Newton. I was quite impressed. I hadn't really ever paid a whole lot of attention to the airport, but what they do with it. They really have expanded and do a lot of stuff with the airport, from industry to multiple hangars, and it has a pretty good income stream coming into that, as well as taxes. I think that the guy that spoke was very, very articulate, and is very in tune with the rest of the landing places in the United States as well as Kansas. And we have more in Kansas, small airfields, than anywhere in the country by state. And probably some of the worst funding, I understand, from the federal government, as I understood it, than anywhere else as well. And for them to thrive and do that, I know that we have the cities look into it, and there's been some meetings on our airport out here, and I've been kind of disappointed for years how it's ran. So I hope they're moving in a direction to do that. I think we could do so much more with that. I know it's a city project, but I was just, I come away from that hoping that we could get going in that direction. That would be a real positive for Hutchinson as well. But one of the stinkers in the room before it was over was David Dennis from Sedgwick County had spoke. And sorry to drop your name, Dave, but anyway, he did indicate to us, which is an ongoing problem, not just for Reno County, but wages for emergency responders. And they've been litigation, but they've been in talks for quite a while with the Wichita City Police. They give them a pretty significant increase, and I understand that the county of Sedgwick is going to match that, which will further cause problems for small communities to retain law enforcement. So that's a real concern for the smaller counties to continue to compete with that. I don't know that I like the comment, hang on to your shorts, because we're probably going to take your help, and I didn't like that comment very well. So, but I held my tongue, which is not the case most of the time. Back to the KAC, one of the things they continue to fight is for the LAVTR tax, and they continue to, well, yeah, I'm glad you talked about some other things. I want to elaborate on some of the things. I think one of the keynote speakers I enjoyed the most was that lunch Tuesday that was the KC Fox was there, the fellow that does that. And you know, he was very insightful to some things about life. If you don't know much about him, go and research it. It's quite a story about his life. And I found it very motivational. But back to the LAVTR, there is a whole tool chest on site, and I know you're familiar with that too, Randy. I think we need to do a better job going into an election year of educating people of what that is. It's one small portion, but it amounts to, you know, we looked at that one day because they wanted me to speak to something on the radio, and I used that topic, and I knew that's what they were probably going to ask. But it is a tax that could come back to Reno County off of alcohol sales, fuel, and some other stuff that was relinquished some years ago by the counties and given to the state. And when you relinquish something and give it to the state, they don't want to give it back. And that's what's happened through the course of time. Now, for 20 years, they haven't paid back what they owe the counties, which has added up to almost, I think, $3.5 billion, they said, that the counties are owed by the state. We ever going to see that? Probably not. But going forward, they continue to lobby to try to get that tax paid back to us because it's still statutory that we get that. And so I think we have to fight more for that. But my position on this going into an election year is let's educate the voters into who they need to look at to vote for. And furthermore, if I know a couple of us committed to go to some legislative meetings, and we're going to be really forthright in talking to them about where their stance is on this. If they can't answer to it, I'm going to be a proponent to tell people not to vote for that individual. And I'll just be real blunt about it. That needs to come back. They need to take the stand to give that back to us. And then they've changed the language, Ron. What was the language? And instead of they wanted to call it almost like I don't know what the language they use for giving it to us, basically giving our money to us as almost like a charity to get back to defer some property tax. That very language made me angry. And so I know at this level, there ain't a lot I can do, but the counties have the power to do something if they'll take a stand. I would love to see us put those video resources online. I've already continued to start putting those video resources out on my social media so people can see it. And I'm willing to go and talk about that wherever I need to and provide those videos. Go to the KAC website for Kansas, and you can look those up. And there's a couple of them that are very, very good, give the history of what it is and tell you why we need it. And I just want to challenge people to look for that and be educated before you go into voting for somebody at a state level this year.
Randy, I think that our county, and signed by all commissioners, and needs to send a letter to each one of our legislative and senators in our county. And a comment, I visited with a legislator yesterday morning, and he said, well, let me know when it comes up. Let me know what it is when it comes up. I'm not real enthused with that, but nonetheless, I think maybe we need to send a letter and inform them of where they can look at this and see why.
Well, do one of you want to draft, or you want staff to do it?
I think it'd be good if staff wouldn't mind doing that.
Is there consensus to draft that?
I'd like to see it happen too, yeah.
It'd be a good idea.
What would the letter say? Because
It would follow along, Randy, what's your idea on that? It would follow along with what the KAC put together.
Well, that we would support candidates that would support the idea of returning the LAVTR back to the counties. Something to that regard, that we would stand with those representatives and senators and for the state that, in my opinion, that would be something. We want to see those kinds of things done at state level. I don't know, maybe you can expound on that a little bit.
Well, I was involved with the city of South Hutch when they stopped that, and it made a difference. And it's due to only used to lower property tax.
Directly, yes.
And there's some comment on whether it should come back to the county or maybe go back to the schools.
Right. Yeah, they were talking about that, but it's not coming to the general fund. It's going directly to defer some county taxes for property owners.
Well, I think there's a majority that would entertain a letter. If you could draft something, we can put it on the agenda and talk about it.
My thought, looking just, the LAVTR really has come up because the KAC has gotten in a lobbyist, which they didn't have in the past, who's really driven the bus. And maybe the most efficient thing to do in a letter would just be to say, the Reno County Commission generally supports the KAC position on LATVR, and just kind of piggyback on their efforts.
That would be fine too.
Yeah. Okay. Commissioner Bogner?
Well, I might say, when we met with our local representatives in Topeka beginning of the year, that was kind of one of my favorite things that needed corrected. And we did have a sit down with them all, Ron and I, and made that known. Well, it's been a year and now it's coming to a head. They're getting some pressure, and they're going to have to do something about it. The other thing that wasn't covered by these guys, Quad County, the ongoing deal with the mental health facility that's being proposed to be built in Sedgwick County, which would be very close for our county to use and our courts to use, save us a whole lot of money, move some prisoners that probably shouldn't be, are awaiting mental health evaluations that are costing us money on a daily basis, get them through the system, get so they're not sitting there for as long as a year waiting. This week, they're trying to determine in Sedgwick County and working on it with public meetings where people would want that facility to be. And I think I saw on the news last night, or the night before, they have 4 proposed locations that they're promoting to the public about where, what the public thinks and where the public thinks. But if it's ongoing, and it will save this county and neighboring counties a lot of money but my main point is are working on it real strong right now. So, of course, it'll be a year or two before it gets built. You know how those things go. But at least we're moving in the right direction to stop some of this spending down the line. That'd be about what I came away from that they didn't already address.
Thank you, Commissioner Bogner. Commissioner Parks?
One thing to back up and ask, and I'm not sure quite how to ask this, but there have been, and there always is, it seems like there have been concerns with bid processing sometimes in how that is done when we send out a request for bid for items or building or construction or things. I would like to see, and I don't know if that's something we can do, you can tell me, you guys, if this is something that is appropriate or not. I would like to see, for instance, if bids come in to be opened up, they come to a third party in the county that is somehow a third party always present. I know there's some instances where they go to certain places that we actually help manage funds, let's say that, to even elected officials, and it's kind of, I know that's kind of a difficult situation, but I have had feedback that people think sometimes it's not exactly fair. I have no reason to believe that there isn't integrity in what we do. I think there is. But to take that reasonable doubt from the public away, I would like to see, for instance, if there's a department that gets their own bids and open them, I'd like to see you involved with that, just so we know there's a third party and there's never a question as to whether there was something went on. Is that something that sounds like we could do or we should even do? I'm just throwing it out there.
I think we could put that into practice, but I think right now that is taking place. I know on the issue that you were called about, there
Right.
was a third party when that was opened.
There was, okay.
There was. Someone from the sheriff's office was right there. So that is taking place already. We just don't have it in a
Well, I
formal
mean,
policy.
but was all that within that department? All the people that were present within that
There were
department?
two different departments.
Okay, that answers the question. Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Okay. I think we've got 2 executive sessions and a study item and a Christmas lunch.
Chairman?
Yeah.
I'd like a little more time to study and maybe I was negligent and didn't use my time very useful, but I'd like to have some time to look at that facility master plan and space needs before we spend a lot of time on it. Just
Okay.
personally, that's.
Well, I mean, that could help. We've got 2 executive sessions. It should be less than 15 minutes. Probably need a 5-minute break. And then, there is a consultant here, and we could take 45 minutes to noon and just kind of get up to speed and do a follow-on conversation. But, I mean, you guys are welcome to stay here all day if you want. I have to leave at 1. But I think that'll be our plan. So we'll take. Let me make the motion here. Just.
Would it be better to talk to the consultant since he's here now first, or do we want to go into executive session first?
Yeah, let's just I think the consensus may be to kind of pause our normal meeting, go into study session, and just do that now with the consultant here, and then do executive session at the end. There's no problem.
And I think we got people here that might be interested in the space study.
Let's take a 5-minute break, come back at a little before 10 after, and then we'll move to study session item 12.